Greetings, programs. This is Wretch, and welcome back to Vampire the Masquerade Sins of the Sires. And the last stream was very quick, to say the least. We activated our rank 5 celerity, and we sped through chapter 6 in about 15 minutes. And apparently this upcoming chapter is about the same. So this is the same stream that I'm here on a Tuesday night. We're just going to go ahead and complete the game and just, see this story out and see what happens. But now we're in chapter 7, Allegiance. This time, you travel in the back seat of a car that's waiting for you and Persa outside the husk that used to be your home. The car is luxurious, all fresh smelling leather and shininess. A dark glass separates you from the driver. Who's driving? You ask Persa. She dismisses the question with a wave of her hand while she makes herself comfortable on the cream seat. No one important. I think Persa may have fallen into this cult. You sit in silence for a while and watch the city blur past. Your body is tense, so you roll down the window and let the warm, heavy air blow against your face in gusts from the car's speed. You force yourself to lean back in your seat. Streetlights flash their orange comets across the night sky. You close your eyes and contemplate their afterimage on the back of your eyelids. Shooting stars that no one's going to wish upon tonight. After a couple of minutes, Persa rolls up your window without asking. You turn your head towards her questioningly and find her studying your face. Remarkable, she says. What is? The Dorian I know would have talked my ear off with his questions by now. And why do you suppose I haven't? You study her in turn. She lowers her eyes, as if what she's about to say shames her. Because you don't trust me anymore. And am I wrong? She squirms a little in her seat, then shows you her palms as if to prove how unarmed she is, though you know she's anything but. Okay, go ahead and ask anything you want. You look away, then turn to face her again. Where are we going? And where's Marcos? You ask, and when she hesitates, you continue. Persa, I just found out you're okay. You just found out I made it out in one piece, and you just seem content to lounge in a fancy car and not talk to me. You're being weird, even by your standards. Persa gives you a lopsided smile. Sorry, she says. Remorse was never her strong suit. This is Sophia's car, she says after a while. We're going to her place. They're expecting us. They. Are you going to ruin the whole surprise? I was never one for surprises. I always hated them, you say, and being attacked by a bunch of ghouls and vampires who are trying to murder us somehow hasn't managed to change my mind. Persa laughs, but it comes out forced. She imitates zipping her lips. You'll see, she says. Great things lie ahead, if you play your cards right. I have cards. She laughs again and gives you a look that says, you silly, impatient thing. Just you wait. Got a bad feeling about this. I'm getting Wicker Man vibes. Slowly the cityscape gives way to the suburbs, then the suburbs to something even more affluent, with wide open spaces dotted by the occasional mansion the likes of which you've only seen in movies and paparazzi pictures. You suppose the super rich inhabit their own separate world, away from the unwashed masses and even the regular rich whose wealth is countable and sits in plain sight for all to see. But Sophia Comeno belongs to the old families, the kind whose wealth is invisible, so vast you can't really see the entirety of it until you zoom way, way out. And that's before you take into account the added value and power that comes from just being around for lifetimes. That's how you play the really long game. The car veers off the main road onto a long, curving lane that looks like it belongs in a movie about made-up European countries and their ruling families, with their castles and fleets of old cars they can't use anymore. For a moment, the idea that you might be a made-up character yourself takes root in your mind and seduces you with the possibility. What would it be like to be a fictional character? Just another collection of ink and paper in a book with its own backstory and motivations. You're full of so much mundane detail that when the plot needs you to do something, they can pull you out and have you do it without any messy internal conflicts dragging you down. That's the fantasy anyway. The car rolls to a stop. Sophia's castle, because let's be honest, you fully expect a castle at this point, lies just beyond a row of trees, behind high speared gates that open for you electronically. The mansion itself doesn't disappoint. An architectural marvel is what it is, the kind of place that screams prestige. A sprawling white building with giant bay windows extending out to a large marble swimming pool lined with palm trees, the shimmering reflection of moonlight on the water giving it a almost silvery tint. Persa climbs out of the car and you follow her in silence. The gates shut immediately behind you. 3 armed men dressed in black emerge and stand in line in front of you. Then, they usher you in. Beyond the marble steps, the front door is reinforced steel that opens to an elevator. That's when you realize the whole beautiful monstrosity above is but a front. The real house is wholly underground. You descend. Down, down, down you go. Persa stands rigidly, facing the door. The suspense is killing me, I say. You try to dispel that thing that's entered the elevator with you, a kind of tension that's been sucking out the air. Not that you need air. The suspense is killing me, you say, but Persa only smirks in response. After a few moments, the doors open and you step into a vestibule. From Persa's whole shtick, you might expect a cave carved into the belly of the earth, lit by torches and decorated with animal hides. What greets you is a newly built underground lair, if you can call it that. Everything is white marble and mirrors, and there's so much glass that you can almost pretend you're in an art museum or something. Hidden lighting shows off the minimalist, expensive furniture and the rare pieces of art that decorate the walls. Persa proceeds further in, and you follow without needing to be told. You walk in on a scene plucked from a novel. Sophia in her full Byzantine regalia, standing tall and imperious against a dark wall, a piece of cloth draped across her extended arms, a dead rabbit at her feet. A few meters from her, an easel. A woman you haven't seen before is painting her portrait. Dio is standing further back, watching the woman work, occasionally stepping closer and offering a low-voiced comment about the placement of a line or the depth of a shadow. None of them acknowledge your arrival. "So, this is a nice place," I say loudly. Sophia's head jerks towards you and she holds you in her cold, dark gaze, but her face betrays no emotion. The painter straightens and calmly deposits her brush on a low table next to her stool. Then she regards you, and so does Dio. Unfazed, you plop yourself on a teal couch. You run your hands along the grain of the velvet, and then against it. Sophia lets the cloth drop to the floor and steps over the dead animal to strut towards you. "Rise," she commands when she's closer, and you have no choice but to obey. She grabs your chin and inspects your face as if trying to divine something in your features, the depth of your eyes. Her hands are steady, her touch sharp and unforgiving. She was born to rule, and she knows it. You can tell by the way she holds herself. You can picture her sitting on a throne, dispensing court justice, doling out death sentences with her slender fingers. As if prompted by Sophia's presence before you, a jumble of images assaults you, overlapping and difficult to understand. A younger Sophia, Her hair a few shades lighter, her eyes more human, hunting with her father. He uses a bow, and she wields a small spear, a tiny animal withering at the end of her weapon. Parsa, half naked, her face dripping with her own blood. An empty grave, a pile of ashes. It's Sophia's voice that pulls you out of that well. Yes, she says. The Viennese was right. You really are your sire's child. Stay calm. You know who my sire is. You give her your straightest look, hone your voice into its most commanding and steady shape. Sophia curls her upper lip, giving you something between a smile and a snarl. And what would you do if I told you? Guess I'd need some time to digest it. You keep your face as calm as possible, and after a second of thought, you keep yourself from shrugging. It's not every night that a person finds his long-lost daddy, or mommy, parent. That snarl smile again, except this time it's more snarl than smile. Is this a joke to you? Honestly, I have no idea what this is, or why I'm here. Her face relaxes into her usual mask of composure, and she moves past you as if you hadn't spoken at all. Can I offer you some sustenance? She asks. I understand you preferred packaged food, but I'm afraid we keep none of that vile stuff here. We do have a selection of mortals who'll be happy to donate some blood for your sake. She pauses. Honestly, I never understood the appeal. Or, I hear you've discovered some new talent within yourself recently. She hears. From whom? Perhaps a chance to refine it or one of your other strengths would not be wasted on you. Ooh. We're just growing hungry. What do you guys think? Should we accept the offer of sustenance? Should we hone powers or build some rapport with the people here? I don't think I'm going to make a whole lot of political progress. I think it might be best to go ahead and get some more juice for our powers. Or maybe we could just get some more juice and get our blood pool filled up. Which sounds the best? I can definitely see the benefits of the first two. Yeah, I wouldn't eat any of the food here. That's just asking to get like bloodbound to something you don't want to be bloodbound to. You know what? Let's hone powers. They're below our standards. Honing one of my powers sounds like a good idea. That's very generous of you, you reply, bowing your head slightly. But why would you offer me something like this? Sophia fixes you with those depthless eyes of hers. Oh, I intend to wield you, Dorian. And I want the weapons I wield to be as sharp as they can be. She calmly clasps her hands together before her. So, what kind of weapon are you going to be for me? So we've got our fortitude and our dominate. So do we want to max out our dominator 3 or do we want our fortitude to go to 2? My instincts? All that blood is loaded with the wacky tobacco. You know, seen enough after school specials? My instinct tells me to go with resilience, but having that 3 at dominate actually may be the best. Might not be time to be a jack of all trades. Yeah, that's true. You know what? We're going to be better at controlling minds. We're going to max out our dominate. The fortitude is nice, but it didn't really do much with us against the gangrel. So Sophia nods, satisfied. Come with me, she says, and leads you down the long corridor that extends to your right. The corridor ends in a domed octagonal space that feels older, or maybe just less modern, than the rest of the residence. The walls are stone, and so is the floor. A few wooden chairs with high, carved backs rest against the walls. The space is illuminated by actual torches resting in every few meters. Still no animal hides, though. There's a door at the far end of the room. Come in, says Sophia, and the door opens. A young man dressed in a long maroon linen gown steps into the space. His hair is dark and long, down to his shoulders. He takes a few steps closer and then stops, his bare arms hanging loosely at his sides. Sophia turns to you. Show me what you can do, she tells you. You nod, hold the man's gaze, and issue a string of commands. Immediately, the man proceeds to put out all the torches one by one, and then uses the last one to reignite them. Good, Sophia says, holding your gaze in turn. Now drink from him, she commands. You do. That's enough, Sophia says, and you stop. Now, what I'll show you is a little different. You're not simply telling someone what to do, you're telling them what to remember. She walks up to the man and lifts his chin to hold his gaze. Tell me how you met me, she commands. I was in the hospital, he says. Very ill. You came in the night and took me away, gave me your blood and rescued me. Not breaking eye contact, Sophia tells him that, actually, she came to the club where he worked as a dancer. She found him in the cage that he locked himself in every night to earn his pitiful living. The story goes on for quite some time as Sophia carefully narrates every detail of how they met. When she let him out of his cage and told him he could live with her, she says, he kissed her feet. Sophia breaks away. Then, she says sweetly, tell him how we met. Dan, clear-eyed, obliges. He repeats the memory Sophia recounted word for word. Then at the end, he adds a flourish of his own. She was the most dazzling creature I'd ever seen. Sophia smiles. She cups his head with one palm and kisses his temple softly. Now your turn, she says. I don't know how to do that. Look for the same thing that allowed you to command him to extinguish the torches and twist it slightly. Memory is not so different from action. Neither is imagination. The mind, in fact, does not distinguish between the two. She pauses. There is one thing, however. Some responsibility comes with this power. The memory you alter will be cemented as truth in his mind. You must choose well, and be careful what you replace it with. This is a seed, so be mindful of what will grow. It takes you many tries. Time blurs, and you're unsure how long you've been in this room, but in the end, you make the man recite, excitedly, a holiday he took as a kid with his mom and dad to the white towers of an island that doesn't exist. It was his favorite holiday, he tells you earnestly. You'd ask him for his most precious childhood holiday, and he told you he didn't have any. His mom was a drug addict that abandoned him to a poor aunt. He never met his father. Before you leave the man behind, you take one last look at him. How many times has he has his mind altered? His memory nothing but a box that people took things in and out of on a whim. Was that even a real memory? You ask Sophia. The one I replaced. Sophia laughs and doesn't reply. Still slightly giddy at your newfound skills, you return to the main area. We did feed. Okay, we need to feed again soon. Not enough. A few moments later, one of Sophia's lackeys appears, whispers something in her ear, and leads her away. When she returns, Marcos is with her. He seems fine. He looks at you. Then, instead of an excuse, some explanation of what the fuck is going on, or how he made it out of the fire in one piece, he nods at you. I thought you were gone. You try to keep your face free of emotion and almost manage it. Almost. I'm right here, Marcos replies. And why do you look so guilty? You were told Amphitryon was murdered, yes? Marcos asks mildly. Yes. By Gore. So, what does that have to do with me? Alright, you say. I still don't see why I'm here. The prince has put a bounty on Gore's head. He wants his skull deposited at his feet, to be crushed to dust in front of him, Sophia says. He's promised a boon to whoever delivers it. She pauses. That is your task, and why you were brought here. I really want nothing to do with this. I don't want to be involved, you say. Someone else can claim this boon. Sophia smiles a condescending smile. You speak as if you have a choice in the matter, she says. In which case, child, you misunderstand the situation deeply. But why me? Because that way, when you deliver Gore's skull, you can finally ask the prince for your proper place in his court. My proper place. The vision grips you then. Pesistrato's face, his delicate face, his hands on yours. You, kneeling before the prince, reaching for his knee, your gaze mesmerized by the intricacies of his wreath of gold leaves, his breath on your neck, his blood on your lips. Marcos holds you by the shoulders, bringing you back to reality. Pesistratos made you, Dorian. He made you what you are. You are his child. You shake your head. But he's met me. Why didn't he know me? He embraced you in a bout of madness. A bout of madness. You've heard the stories of the children of Malkav, the clan of the moon, the mad raving lunatics and oracles spewing unintelligible wisdoms in the night. Is that what these visions are? What they've always been? Is this the reason you are the way you are? Malkavian. Not caitiff, then. Not the abandoned child of some unknown wretch who didn't know how to feed. Hey! The prince's progeny. Tell him about the prophecy, too, Sophia orders. Marcos licks his lips. It was found in one of Vol's old tomes. It told of the Malkavian prince of Athens who would be destroyed by his youngest child unknown. He ordered your destruction. I found you, told Pesistratos you were slain, hid you. After she just get an elaborate lesson on rewriting memories. This is very true. You knew about this from the start, I ask Marcos. Marcos doesn't reply. You saw me struggle. You saw what being abandoned did to me, and you still kept this a secret. I won't have you lecture me, he says abruptly. I did what I had to do. I took care of you. You think I owe you more than that? Stop bickering, Sophia says. There are more important issues to deal with than your personal difficulties. You're silent for a few moments, taking it all in. So what's the goal here then? You ask. To bring down the prince? And then what? Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves, Sophia responds. And just so we're clear, we expect you to succeed. If you don't, it's not just your head that's at stake. She pronounces the word stake with a piercing sibilant S. You stay silent, unwilling to even give her a name, anything that can be used against you. But she already has a weapon. It's that monk who keeps sticking his nose where he has no business being, Sophia says. Brother Isidoros, is it? Sophia makes no effort to hide her contempt for the monk and all he stands for. At least she didn't mention Marios. Okay, you're scary and threatening. I get it. And I really should pull this off, I've got it. Sophia raises an eyebrow. Is that your answer then? You know, out of all the people that we've ran into during this entire thing, I think we should probably help Gore. What do you guys think? Now, Gore's been kind of in the background. We haven't had a whole lot of interaction with him, but he seems to be, yeah, Gore! Gore! Paul Heyman just screaming for some reason. He doesn't know why. Yes, we will lie to them and side with Gore! Yes, you say. Of course. I'll do it. After all, you've made it pretty clear. What choice do I have? Oh, choose 3, my lord? Excellent, Sophia says. Marcos catches your eye. He lingers there for a few moments, as if he can see through your intentions. But if he does, he chooses not to betray you. Not again, anyway. Gore is bound for Belgrade, Sophia continues. He'll be on the train that leaves before dawn. You will switch trains in Thessaloniki and should arrive in Belgrade just after sunset tomorrow evening. Belgrade. And how am I supposed to travel to Belgrade on a train during the day? A few moments later, you're standing before an unassuming brown casket. Birch, maybe. So, that's a coffin. Marcos nods. He puts a hand on your shoulder. We'll all travel in one, sooner or later, he says. Are you trying to be deep? His expression drops any mirth. No, he says. Just lighten the mood. You will try to intercept Gore at the station, Sophia adds. But should you fail for whatever reason, you will have another chance in Belgrade. This casket will be waiting for you in the rear storage carriage of the train. All right. And why Belgrade? Sophia falters for a second, but then composes herself. That we're unsure of. So if you fail to catch Gore in Athens, there's still an upside. You might be able to give us information about what connections Gore has in Belgrade. I see. That's a lot of moving parts and a lot of responsibility placed on you. Do they really trust you to pull this off? We'll provide you with a weapon discreet enough to conceal on the journey. The weapon turns out to be a tiny blade made of wood, sharpened to a razor edge and hidden inside a fountain pen. What they expect you to do with this cross between sword wannabe and miniature stake is beyond you. You should really do something about those scratches, Sophia says, nodding at the wounds left behind by the gangrel's claws. Marcos will help you mend. A couple of hours later, your wounds are mended and you're in a car. This one nowhere near as luxurious as the one that got you here, being driven to the train station. The hurt from the scratches is now nothing but a faint echo. You could have given me some food. The car drops you off a few blocks away from the Athens railway station, and you have to cover the rest of the distance on foot. The station itself is an ugly beige, squat building that dates back to the early 20th century, when the kingdom of Greece belonged to a young Danish prince and stretched only as far north as the city of Larissa in Thessaly. With only 3 platforms and 4 tracks in use, finding Gore shouldn't be difficult. The inside of the station is brightly lit, with a scattering of sleepy people squeezed on the few benches or sprawled on the floor. The split-flap display informs you the train to Thessaloniki departs from platform 2 on the far side of the station. You palm the ridiculously small blade in your pocket, make sure it stays out of sight, because you have no intention of using it on Gore. The train tracks stretch long and rusty into the light night air, flanked by a row of trees, and beyond, a dusty field of dirt and wildflowers. Lighting outside the station is poor, but you can already spot Gore among the few people standing on the platform, his upright back, his proud head. You approach quietly, but not so much that you make him suspicious or defensive. With the bounty on his head, the whole undead city will be coming after him. He spots you almost immediately. "What are you doing here?" he asks. "Everyone seems to be out for your head tonight." Gore regards you with some suspicion. "And you?" he asks. "Are you after my head too?" "No, I'm not." You tell him about Sophia and her plans for the two of you then. He listens carefully, waiting for you to finish. When you do, he lets a few moments pass before speaking again. "Except I wasn't the one who destroyed Amphitryon. You must know that, right?" he asks. "No. Then who did?" "Who has more to win from that plan you just laid out?" He spreads his palms. "Isn't it obvious? Sophia. With Marcos's help, of course. They're using you, me, and all of us to get what they want." He pauses. "You could be working with them for all I know. This faux honesty could be part of your plan to get to me." "Is that what you think?" He looks away at the few people waiting on the platform. "How do I know I can trust you?" he asks. "Oh, you don't," you reply. "That's what trust is." You were right about everything being after Gore tonight, or everyone being after Gore tonight, though. Soon, you spot the first suitor to Gore's head. Dinah, the vampire you met at the hospital the other night. Is she going to attack in front of all of these people? Gore answers your unasked question by gesturing toward the field that lies beyond the line of trees. She'll follow. Soon, all three of you are concealed from view of the platform behind the trees. Dinah's posture is openly hostile. She's definitely not here for a friendly chat. "What do you want?" Gore asks, ever the one to give people a second chance, never to assume the worst of others. Dinah shows him her teeth first, then the sword she had concealed inside her trench coat, like a character straight out of a bad Highlander knockoff. "What do you think?" she asks. As if to emphasize how not here for a chat she is, Dinah attacks. She lunges at Gore at breakneck speed, brandishing her sword. It's metal, but equipped with a kind of mean-looking wooden spearhead at the end. It glints in the faint moonlight, filtered to brown through the dirty sky of the city. But Gore parries the attack with ease, and instead of countering, he stands aside, his attention on something else. "What on earth are you doing?" you ask Gore. His attention elsewhere, Gore produces a small blade from the back pocket of his jeans and cuts open a vein in his arm. Then he brings his mouth to the wound and appears to be drinking his own blood. Dinah attacks again. Gore turns to face her and barely avoids being run through by her blade. The sword grazes his side as he grabs Dinah's arm and pulls her toward him. Then, he places his mouth on hers. Moments later, Dinah clutches her throat and falls to her knees, the sword released from her grip. She staggers, trying to stand, but Gore retrieves her sword. In no hurry at all, he pushes her to the ground with a foot to her chest. But he underestimated her. With inhuman force, she grabs Gore's foot and twists, throwing him off her. Dinah stands again, and this time it's Gore who's on the ground. It's your turn. Be quick, be smart. Be quiet, quick, and deadly. Let's see. Wow, our stealth is only at 30 and we've got Obfuscate 3. Yowza. So I would say be quick and be smart. What do you guys think? Option number 2 seems to be the best one. Okay, be quick and be smart. Whoop. You try to grab Dinah's sword before she does, but you're not fast enough. She recovers enough to trip you, and you end up on the ground, the sword centimeters from your hand. She recovers it and slices through your arm. For a moment, what will follow plays through your mind. Dinah will plunge the sword into your heart, then chop your head off, and it'll all be over. But Gore intervenes, this time with his teeth. He grabs Dinah from behind and sinks his fangs into her neck, drinking, a look of pleasure and guilt on his face. Then he catches your eye. Who knows what he sees there that makes him stop, but he releases Dinah briefly, just long enough to push her to her knees. With her own sword, he takes her head. When it's done and Dinah's body is turning to a mess of quickly rotting flesh, Gore comes to inspect your wounds. Are you all right? He asks. I'll live, is what you'd say under any other circumstances, but that's not right anymore, is it? So you don't say a thing. See, the problem with that is, like, you can use dominating combat. Dominating combat is actually quite disgusting, so I wish they had that option. The train is already on the platform and about to depart when you get there. Gore gives you a slight nod before he grabs the handles and hoists himself up the metal steps. The nod means, this is it. There's no turning back now. Then he disappears into the belly of this huffing beast. Board the train. Inside, the train is crowded. Most of the seats are taken, and some people prefer the floor between the carriages rather than looking for a place-down train, but Gore squeezes himself into a smelly compartment and motions at you to follow him. A woman, as if sensing something off about the two of you, leaves the compartment, making space for you by the window. Soon, the train pulls away from the platform, wheels complaining under its bulk. Then the sound grows louder and louder. Outside, Athens blurs past, dressed in its squalor and streetlights until that too you leave behind and everything is dark. You watch the other passengers' faces in the dim yellow lights of the compartment. A woman falls asleep as soon as she leans her head against the back of your seat. A young man wearing a blank expression, his eyes staring ahead into nothing. Couples folded into each other, one earbud each, their music a tiny, wordless snagging. You hear laughing, far away, lively gurgling like a stream. Gore studies your face, undisturbed by how out of place that laughter sounds. Is he trying to divine your intentions? Is he weighing you, you wonder? Because here among these mortal strangers, you feel weighed? So, you've been to Sophia's mansion, I guess the word is for it, Gore says, haven't you? Yes, I have. Gore nods. I haven't, but I've heard a lot about it. What did you make of it? I'd never seen anything like it before. She must be powerful. Powerful, yes, Gore agrees. The kind of power that sucks in everything around it, like a black hole. That compounds and condenses until there's nothing else left to absorb, and yet it keeps going. He pauses and looks away. The mansion that ate the universe. Outside, everything is dark. You can make out the giant bodies of mountains on one side, the slow-moving sea on the other. This country has always been good at contradictions. Gore stirs in his seat. I'm hungry, he says, and he extends his hand. Will you join me? I will ignore his hand but follow him. You got those hungry eyes. You move past him and make your way out of the compartment and down the dark aisle. The train reeks of humanity. Sweat, food, exhaustion. You're halfway to Thessaloniki now, and the beast has emptied some of its passengers into the smaller cities along the way, but it still feels crowded, full of potential. A buffet. Except not for you, not for your requirements, predilections, moral choices, whatever you want to call them. There's no chance of feeding on a bag here, so your options are limited. Take as little as possible from some unsuspecting wretch, ask Gore for scraps, or sample a pet, maybe? Head for the toilets, some poor bastard it is. Gore lets you find your own meal, and you make your way to the space between the carriages where the toilets are. The place reeks, and the door is ajar. You can see a guy through the crack, trying to aim by anticipating the train's rhythmic shaking and failing miserably. You push your way in and close the door with your back. There's hardly space for both of you in the tiny cubicle. The guy's surprised, his hand still holding his dick. No longer peeing, thankfully. He tries to shout, but you put a hand over his mouth. You're not very good at this. Quickly, you push your teeth into his neck and take as little as possible, as fast as possible. The guy's body relaxes soon, slumping mercifully against you. You try to pretend he's a bag, but the blood... it's good. It's so fucking good. When you're done and meet up with Gore again, the train is rolling into Thessaloniki. This is where you'll have to change trains and continue on to Belgrade. In the distance, below the low city skyline, the coming dawn is diluting the night's dark into a deep blue. We're cutting this close, Gore says. After you leave the train, you pause for a moment to watch your coffins loaded onto the train to Belgrade. Aren't I lucky? The luckiest person in the world. Who gets to own a death and be around to talk about it. You can already feel the sun itch on your skin, so you need to get to your coffins as soon as you board. Gore shows you the way. He's not speaking. There's something heavy in his demeanor now, as if he's oppressed by the idea of spending the day in a box meant for a corpse. You settle in and let your body drift into a lonely slumber. You leave the coffins at sundown, just as the train is reaching the outskirts of Belgrade. The area around the train station greets you with its gray, brutalist architecture, the square, crumbling buildings recounting the dark history of the 90s, but as you walk further in, you start to notice the cobblestone streets, the colorful walls, the brass Balkan music echoing in the distance, vibrant and full of life. You follow Gore uphill, absorbing the surroundings until he stops abruptly and looks around, his shoulders tense, his face alert, as if he's sniffing the air. What's wrong? You ask, but the answer becomes immediately obvious when the dark figure peels away from a wall and stands before you. Capriel, a sword in one hand, a stake in the other. How did he know you were coming? Had he been watching you? Is he working for Sophia? His advice echoes in your mind unbidden. If you ever see me again, he told you, run. Well, Capriel says, fancy running into the two of you up here. But Gore's not in a talking mood. He's ready to fight. So we can vanish, attack with teeth, grab Gore and flee, or attack as fast as possible. What does that sound, folks? I'm thinking we should either grab Gore and flee, or just go poof and let the two sort themselves out. Poof, yeah. Ninja vanish! Whoop. You're all that matters now. Now, not what happens to Gore, or Capriel, or anyone else. Only yourself. You must save yourself. You move your blood and make yourself vanish from view of Capriel. Then out of view, you watch everything go down. Capriel is fast and ruthless, a blur of blade and fist that sweeps Gore off his feet once and then again. You register the scene only in fragments. The ugly twist of Capriel's mouth, the simmering hatred in his eyes, the exhaustion betrayed by the way Gore holds himself. In the end, though, it's not skill or technique that decides this battle. It's pure strength, and perhaps the will to win, to keep playing this brutal game, to go on. And it seems Gore doesn't want to. Capriel impales Gore with his stake, the blade going right through Gore's heart, sending him to a state where he can no longer be reached by words or deeds or senses. Capriel spares not a moment to mourn for his child. He proceeds to decapitate the prostrate man as if he's no one, just a stranger, someone he's never met before, or more than that, not a person at all, but something to be discarded, dirt to be washed away. Eventually, Capriel comes for you. "Do you think you're hiding, young one?" he asks. "You can't hide from me." Okay, so that, I think we should have had a little bit more option there. I think we should have had the option to, I think we should have been able to vanish and then have the option to intervene in the fight or run away. I think that should have had a little bit more spice to it than what it did. "So why are you doing this?" "You are unimportant," he says, "but you still have a part to play. I'm taking you back to Athens." The next thing you recall is his stake going through your heart, a cold spreading. The world recedes. You're aware of being carried, dragged rather, like a sack. You drift away again. Something wets your lips. Capriel above you, holding you down, forcing his blood into your mouth. "Resist!" Uncoordinated, you push away his hand, try to turn your head to spit out the vitae, but he will not be denied. He steadies you with a hand strong as a vice and pours his shackles into you. Slowly, your body mends itself. Flesh recovers. And minds, do they mend too? Do they recover? Somewhere far away, you register the rhythmic rocking of a train. You're being taken back to Athens or somewhere else. You lose yourself in visions of Europe. Prague with its old buildings and cobbled streets, with its astronomical clock that was so perfect the commissioners had its maker blinded. Amsterdam with its canals. Ljubljana with its bridges and its history. Lisbon with all the sadness of its dead. Florence and its Renaissance. Your vision clears and then clouds again. Capriel talking. Capriel saying he's sorry. For what? You ask, or maybe you don't. Maybe it's not you asking, but someone else entirely. For shredding your mind, you think he replies. All right, so that was interesting. That was a much longer chapter than chapter 7, chapter 6, which I was grateful for. But a little bit of action there. It's one of those things that I think the combat, you only seem to have an option whether you can be stealthy, whether you can be quick, or whether you can be strong. And combat in the World of Darkness is so much more than that. So I don't know. I guess we're just kind of out of our league when it comes to the fighting department. I mean, we can definitely get like visions and we can vanish if we need to. However, that may have also been just kind of a storyteller thing. Gore was going to die regardless of what happened. You know, like you were either going to kill Gore or Capriel was going to show up and kill him no matter what you did. I'm not sure. It was but with my... Oh, you're certain that this is the last chapter? Interesting. Well, anything can happen, guys. So, perfect time to go ahead and end this episode, or this chapter, and we'll see what happens in Chapter 8. Now, if you haven't followed the Twitch channel, please do so. I try and stream on Tuesdays, Thursdays, weekends, and random times in between. And if you're watching the replay of this on YouTube, I have a link to the Twitch channel in the description below, a link to Vampire the Masquerade, Sins of the Sires, its Steam page linked, and a link to my Extra Life page where I'm raising money for my local children's hospital via the awesome Extra Life charity. So check out all of those links if you feel so inclined. Like, share, subscribe. You guys know the drill there. And we will see you next time. Later days, everyone.